Live from downtown Detroit, home of WDIV and Click on Detroit, Local 4 News at noon starts now.
Feeling the impact, the U.S. economy in turmoil as fears over the coronavirus intensify and major events from coast to coast are canceling. But as the U.S. contends with the new virus, there is optimism in South Korea and China. Winner takes all? Michigan takes center stage in the Biden-Sanders showdown. It's a Keystone 2020 contest and the biggest delegate prize since Biden's fast surge. Sanders turning here to save his campaign.
On Tuesday, let's win here in Michigan.
Biden also looking here to put an end to his rival's White House hopes.
Michigan, I'm counting on you in a big way.
Who will win the 125 delegates at stake here in Michigan? And what about the 227 delegates at stake in 5 other states today? Inside Super Tuesday, the sequel, now at noon. And thank you for joining us this noon. Joe Biden still stumping here in Detroit. Take a look. He is visiting the Fiat Chrysler plant in Detroit.
The reason why we have is just to build the last. Wall Street didn't build this country. Y'all built the country.
Thank you for joining us this noon. The Michigan primary does top our newscast. The 2020 nomination fight getting real for Democrats right here, right now. We have comprehensive coverage ahead for you, including a closer look at some of the local issues that are on your ballot in addition to the presidential primary. Let's get to Larry Spruill joining us now live at Walter Chrysler Elementary School in Detroit. And how's voter turnout been since you've been there?
Well, Rhonda, it's no secret that Michigan is a huge win when it comes to delegates for both of the candidates. And we have been to several precincts across Metro Detroit. One of the busiest ones is Chrysler Elementary School. I talked to voters. They tell me there are certain topics that are interested to them.
I am a lifetime voter. It started with my parents. And now that I'm 90 years old, I figure I should continue the process.
Lillian Smith says voting is a tradition and she does not take it lightly. Smith is just one of thousands of voters turning out for the Michigan Democratic primary on Tuesday. Chief Election Supervisor Janice Winfrey.
Numbers are looking good at our usual busy precincts, but for a presidential primary, it'll probably be 30%, something like that, turnout.
Former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders both made multiple stops through Michigan, even stopping through the Motor City, reaching out to voters. Voters I talked to say it's certain key topics they're focusing on.
Well, Bernie Sanders is the person and the candidate who's spoken most about climate change, and I feel that it's really important to me as a young person to continue working for a world that is habitable.
For me, I wanted to see someone who could maybe unite the country more, so things are a little less divisive. That's important to me.
And so we also talked to the election supervisor. She tells me that absentee voting is another issue that they're dealing with, and that could change the whole prospect of the voter turnout because a lot of people are taking advantage of that. Also, another issue on the table is coronavirus. Coming up tonight at 5, I'll show you how poll workers here are what they're doing to keep people safe. We're live in Detroit this afternoon. Larry Spruill, Local 4.
All right, Larry, thank you. My jaw dropped when he said that lady was 90. I can't believe it. All right, while the nation is watching the presidential primary here in Michigan, there are also a lot of local issues on the ballot that we are keeping an eye on. Proposals and millages from pop to art, and Nick Monticelli takes a closer look at those for us this noon.
The headlines and commercials you may be sick of mainly focus on the presidential primary, but that's not all you're voting for today. The major millage that voters in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties will decide is a millage extension for the Detroit Institute of Arts. In 2012, the museum said the extension would not be needed. That's no longer true. They are again asking for 0.2 mils for another 10 years, expiring in 2032. And in your local municipalities, local measures galore. For instance, Bloomfield Township has a public safety millage renewal. Clinton Township voters will decide on marijuana businesses and much more. In fact, looking through ballots, almost every community has something hyper-local. Like in Memphis, a tax increase proposal for a new community center, and building renovations. The bottom line is, do your research before going to vote. You don't want to be caught off guard. I'm Nick Monticelli, Local 4.
All right, Nick, thank you. And to see what your ballot looks like and the issues in your community, you can find a sample ballot on clickondetroit.com, and we will keep monitoring the election results for you throughout the day and evening as they roll in. And you can find those results on Click on Detroit and right here during our evening and nightly newscasts. Well, this morning, U.S. stocks rebounded from their worst day of trading since the 2008 financial crisis after the White House set the stage for a raft of measures to counter the coronavirus effect on the economy. However, the Dow is back in negative territory as we look at the big board. You can stay here with Local 4 and clickondetroit.com for comprehensive coverage of what's happening on Wall Street. Dow actually up at this check, so that's good news. Hopefully it'll stay that way the rest of the day. We just covered the economic impact of the coronavirus, but there are other important facets of this crisis to cover. Experts and efforts are working to contain the outbreak, and those efforts are greatly expanding. Today, Health and Human Services, the Secretary, Alex Azar, said that the department does not know how many Americans have been tested for the coronavirus. He also suggests that older Americans avoid large gatherings, such as campaign rallies. More than 20 people have died in the United States from the virus. Infections are continuing to spread in all but a handful of states. The coronavirus rolling unabated across the nation and the world. The global death toll, the number of people that have died, is 4,000. And the number of confirmed cases worldwide has approached 115,000. Meantime, as Kelly Kobiea reports, neither country is claiming victory over the virus, but there is some optimism in South Korea and China.
The mood here in South Korea is one of cautious optimism. Top officials suggesting that the coronavirus may have already peaked here 11 days ago on February 28th. That's when they reported new cases at more than 900 in a 24-hour period. It hasn't gotten that high since. In fact, we've seen a steady drop-off since that date. Today, the number of new cases reported, 131. Sadly, 54 people have died here, but still a much lower rate of death than in other countries. A part of the reason health officials say this is happening here is because of the vast amount of testing. There's also more optimism in China today. Just 19 new cases reported in the past 24 hours. As another sign of confidence, President Xi Jinping went to Wuhan, the city at the center of this coronavirus outbreak, visiting the city, visiting first responders. This is a place where they're closing these military hospitals, these makeshift hospitals that were set up to combat the virus at the height of it. And this is a signal to the world at this point from the Chinese. They're saying they've gotten through the worst of it and now are coming out the other side. Kelly Kobiea, NBC News, Seoul, South Korea.
Well, that is certainly encouraging. Kelly, thank you. And we would like to reiterate that there are no confirmed cases of the coronavirus here in the state of Michigan. Switching gears with a look outside and turning our attention to the weather and clearing and cooling as we take a look at the sky cam right now. Brandon tracking it all for us after a bit of a wet morning earlier.
It was, and at 5 o'clock this morning, it was raining. 11 degrees warmer than where we are now. We are in the 40s and 30s. Pontiac at 37 degrees with a stiff breeze out of the northwest at about 16. 41 in Ann Arbor. It's 42 in Adrian, 43 at Metro. Winds are pretty steady, 10 to 20 out of the northwest, but gusting 20 to 30 miles an hour at times. Just an occasional burst of wind that keeps it feeling plenty cooler on this primary day. Coolest time of the day will be right now as we get a little bit of sun here and there through the early afternoon, more and more in the later afternoon. Middle 40s, though, pretty much where you should plan to be as you head through the rest of the afternoon. Look at the last couple of frames here. We can see the clearing line back through Lansing and Saginaw, slowly working its way here, but it is not going to really help our temperatures all that much. In fact, a cooler Wednesday could bring a few snowflakes our way. Rhonda, coming up.
All right, Brandon, thank you. A Macomb County man has been sentenced to life in prison for the second time for killing a 2-year-old boy. Ronald D'Ambro Jr. was convicted in 2014 of child abuse and murder in the death of 2-year-old Damian Sutton in the Washington Township home that he shared with his parents and Damian's mother. A new trial was ordered because of withheld evidence, but the guilty verdict was the same, and Damian's mother once again voiced her grief and anger.
At first, I didn't believe in the death penalty. I felt it was too easy. Maybe it is. But to me, him being alive and breathing is not justice for Damian.
For the second time, the sentence for Ronald D'Ambro Jr. was the same: life in prison for first-degree child abuse and felony murder. So awful to have to go through that trial twice as a family. Still to come, Kim Jong-un spotted using binoculars, the troubling reason why coming up. But first, Putin's power grab, how the Russian president is working to stay in office for longer than the